All right, everybody, thank you for your patience. We're going to get started now. My name is Devin Lau, and I am the Associate Director here at Yale Center Beijing. Welcome to all of you for being here. How many of you guys are here for the first time? Oh, wow, great, that's amazing. Usually it's, the same people come back, and it's good to see old friends, but it's also even better to see new friends. And hopefully you guys become our old friends. So since there's so many new people here, I'll give you a quick introduction of Yale Center Beijing. We were established in 2014, so we are now in our 10th year of operation. And the goal is really to bring the best that Yale has to offer to an audience here in China and really across all of Asia. And we've found that our reach is now pretty global. And so we're very happy to have you all here as part of today's program. The topics that we cover range from drama and music and art history to astronomy and philosophy. But of course, a very pressing issue that we're all concerned about globally is climate change. And so luckily, we've had a good friend of the Yale Center Beijing, as well as a good friend of China and a good friend of mine, I think, joining us today, Mary Evelyn Tucker, as well as John Grimm. I'm going to let our moderator for today introduce them more thoroughly, but I just wanted to say that we're very happy to have them back here. During the pandemic, they weren't able to visit for a few years, but pretty much before and after that, they've been here almost every year since the center has been in existence. So we're very happy to have them join us. Otherwise, John and I would just be talking about gardening and flowers in Connecticut. Today, I'm not the official moderator. I'm just here to welcome everybody, and I'm going to turn it over to Bingbing Wang. Bingbing is a Yale World Fellow in 2023, so she just came back not too long ago, and she is currently the Associate Dean and Research Professor at the Institute of Carbon Neutrality at Peking University. I'll let her tell you more about her current work, but I will say that in her very short time at Yale, which is I think it was about 4 months, I met so many people that when I said, "Oh, I'm Devin, I work on China things with Yale," almost everybody that I said that to was like, "Oh, have you met Bingbing?" And so in 4 months, the impact that she was able to have in a place like Yale is just incredible. New Haven's not a huge city, and so I think she pretty much knew everybody in that city. And so very excited to see her here again in Beijing. She is just full of energy and full of excitement, and I think she's exactly the type of a person that we need working on issues of climate change, because we need to get as many people excited about making a difference as we can. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bingbing.
Thank you, Devin. So it's my great honor, to visit Yale last autumn and also talk with Devin and a lot of great professors, especially Mary and John. And it's Mary who changed my journey from climate change to a bigger world. So after a while, during our dialogue, I'm sure we will talk more about this kind of transition. So today, our event will focus on, as Mary mentioned, it should be the first dialogue here on eco-civilization. And just now, I met a friend in the elevator, and I asked her why you came here. And she said, "Oh, because this event, is a bridge between West and East. And I think it's also a bridge between the modern society and the ancient China." So this is the key message from this event. And we have the distinguished guests, two distinguished guests, Mary and John. First, they are a couple. They love each other so much. And I should highlight this point, and because I really impressed this. I think this is more important as a human, and we have a stable relationship, connection, and they are so lucky to have each other. And we should learn from them, from especially this perspective. And they are the co-producer, executive producer of Journey of the Universe, an Emmy-awarded documentary. And we just showed this documentary in Peking University. And there are more than 300 audience join us together. And Mary just mentioned, last time, they also showed the documentary here, and there are more than 77,000 online audience. So it's amazing, right? And yesterday, we also organized a dialogue focused on eco-civilization and climate change. It's a very interdisciplinary topic. So it's also we arranged Peking University's official account for the live streaming. There are more than 27,000 online participants. Yeah. So we can see how this topic is welcomed here in China, especially from my perspective. I feel so impressive. It's an expert from Western country to talk about our own culture, and they love Chinese traditional culture even much more than me. So from this perspective, I really feel, well, they are great, and this is also a very good opportunity for me to learn from Mary and John again, and I hope I have more opportunity together with all of you, to learn from you, both of you. And besides the two distinguished guests, we also have Professor Yao, here, from Renmin University. And his focus and major is Confucianism. And after a while, I believe he will share the insights. And we also have a very great practitioner. Where is Gao? Yeah, Gao is here. Yeah, Gao's work is on Buddhism and conservation. It's also a new field, I think, at least to me. So let's look forward to a dialogue. But first of all, let's welcome Mary and John for their lecture.
I think we're supposed to use the mic. Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to all of you at the Yale Beijing Center.
Yeah.
Devin, you've been a great friend, both at Yale and here. Carol Rafferty, Joyce Wong, and so many others who help arrange these kinds of talks. We're very, very grateful. It's an important center for Yale to be here, but also to extend to the larger world. We have many friends, I can't name them all, and students who have been with us over the years. I want to thank Professor Lu Fang for being with us from Tsinghua, a great Confucian scholar and one who's worked on ecological civilization for many years. We are, in many ways, children of those who have come before and those who have worked on this topic. So we simply want to be a bridge between China and the US on this topic, you see. So, because even in the US, this idea of ecological civilization is beginning to have traction. There's a discussion group on what is eco-civ. So we started a website, we'll give you the QR code later, on ecological civilization just about 10 days ago, but we hope you will contribute. We hope we'll highlight some more articles from China and also translate it into English. So,
I want to simply echo Mary Evelyn's thanks and to say it's our opportunity to extend this heart-mind feeling of gratitude here in China, because we move past the troubles we may have as countries and feel that relationship between peoples that's a good, long friendship, and we want it to continue.
So, and of course, we want to thank our moderator, Wang Binbin, and our fellow panelists, Professor Yao, who we've known many years, and our former student at Yale, a wonderful conservationist, Gao. We're very, very fond of Gao and Yao, we're very fond of. So with all of that, let's begin by saying, again, this is a huge topic. We are not experts, but we feel it's a very important topic for the future of the planet, and probably because China may be the most important country for the future of the planet on this topic and others related to ecology and harmony, which we'll talk about. So as we begin, we're trying to say this is an aspiration for the future. We're moving from an industrial society with unlimited economic growth that's polluting land, air, and water to an ecological civilization that provides a basis for the well-being and health of both people and planet. So in China, from an industrial revolution to ecological civilization. That's the transformation. It's also from sustainability to flourishing. So we're trying to say this is a broader vision for systemic changes in China. And this has been in the Chinese Constitution, as we know, since 2018, to promote the coordinated development of material civilization, political civilization, spiritual civilization, social civilization, and ecological civilization. But it's systemic. It's all of these things, not just ecology, but economics, politics, education, and so on. So if we relate to the center that Wang Binbin has set up, we want to say carbon neutral goal for China in 2020. It was announced that China aims to peak emissions before 2030 and go carbon neutral by 2060 in accordance with the Paris Climate Agreement. Very important, because if accomplished, it would lower the expected rise in global temperature by 0.2 or 0.3 degrees. And this is the biggest single reduction ever estimated by the Climate Action Tracker. So there's a major transition that China's in, so is the West. From unsustainable coal power plants, and China announced in 2021 it will not build coal-fired power projects abroad. This movement from sustainable solar panels to electric vehicles, we know China is the largest producer of this, and we hope the tariffs will go away. There's no tariffs on this. But we also want to emphasize it's not just the physical energy, but it's the renewable energy of the human spirit and this new human energies that's needed to make the change. So it's reviving a worldview that promotes a viable planetary future.
The paradigm shift is obviously needed for both people and planet, and this implies shifting from an anthropocentric or human-centric to an ecocentric or nature-centered worldview in China and the West. It's a movement mainly from a human-focused perspective to an organic, holistic worldview. This anthropocosmic worldview, then, in a Chinese context, implies a broad paradigm shift from a human-dominating worldview to a recovery of an anthropocosmic worldview where humans are situated within the cosmos and Earth. This is needed around the world, in Asia, in the West, and is already present in native or many ethnic traditions. Harmony with nature, then, Tianren Huiyi, the humans are not, obviously, we're not independent from the world, but interdependent. With the dynamic unfolding forces of heaven, universe, and earth, this is compatible with the sciences of evolution and ecology, as well as with traditional Chinese thought. It fosters an organic holism and harmony of humans with nature in Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. So this shift is evident in many Chinese universities and in academia as a large in China. We've been visiting China since 1985, and of course we've seen, like many here, many changes. Last year, in September, we saw the presence, experienced the presence of ecological civilization in ideas and practice at numerous academic institutions we visited, from Datong in the north to Pu'er in the south. So this shift is emerging along with a revival of Chinese philosophy and culture.
So our encounter with China and Confucianism is actually very old, 75 years, because an early interest in China was sparked by our teachers, Theodore de Bary and Thomas Berry. They traveled to Beijing in 1948 to study Chinese language and culture, especially Confucianism. Then they taught us Chinese traditions at Columbia, where I studied, Fordham, where John studied. Thomas Berry was our teacher. He married us. He was a great inspiration in so many ways and was determined to come to China in 48. He was a scholar of world religions, a historian of religions program at Fordham he established, a specialist in Confucianism, but he realized the environmental crisis in the 80s, very early on, and he encouraged our work in world religions and ecology at Harvard. Theodore DeBerry, Ted DeBerry, was also very influential. My grandfather was his teacher at Columbia. My grandfather was a historian of Europe, and we knew his family very well. We still do. So he was my mentor at Columbia. He's the foremost scholar of Neo-Confucianism in the West. Many publications and conferences helped to create Asian studies in the West, especially at Columbia, with courses and translations, but courses on China, on India, on Japan, on Korea. These are huge courses. Hundreds of students now take these courses. And he was very crucial for the translations of Asian classics, which Columbia published. In addition, Winsett Chan, as we say in the West, was one of the greatest Chinese scholars who came, and he was also a mentor. He was on my thesis committee. And even when he was in his late 80s, he would come every week to Columbia for the class on Neo-Confucianism, and he would help all the students. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He was a great scholar and translator. He did the first source book in Chinese philosophy in '63. Then he helped Ted DeBerry and others with the sources of Chinese tradition at Columbia. This is the best-selling book at Columbia University Press all these years. Winsett Chan translated Zhu Xi, Reflections on Things at Hand, and also Wang Yangming. So he was a huge scholar and influence on all of us. He was very much engaged in the transmission of the way, of the Tao. And here's a tribute to him from Irene Bloom. In the life of Winsett Chan, we have seen one of the most extraordinary examples of a modern-day cross-cultural transmission of the way. Winsett Chan, having done more than any scholar in the world to foster that remarkable transmission of the way to the West, was in the closing years of his life engaged in its retransmission back to China, an achievement that made him an altogether worthy successor to his own master, the great 12th century Neo-Confucian Zhu Xi. He was a creator and also a transmitter. Due Ming, many of you know, he was also a huge influence, and we're delighted to be co-sponsoring these events with the Institute for Advanced Studies in Humanistic Studies at Beijing University. Wang Qi and Naomi Zhang are wonderful supporters of this work. So Due Ming is, of course, a scholar of Neo-Confucianism. He's director of this Institute for Advanced Humanistic Studies at Peking University, still a research professor and senior fellow at the Asia Center at Harvard, where he taught for almost 20 years. And we published together 2 volumes on Confucian spirituality with scholars from the US and China. He wanted to see this tradition with its spiritual dimensions, not only its ethical dimensions. So he calls it these days spiritual humanism. So here's one of the important articles that he did from Daedalus, which is the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in the US. We did an issue on religion and ecology, can the climate change, so from all the world's religions. And this ecological turn in new Confucian humanism was his offering. And of course, the new Confucian humanism means those great scholars who went to Taiwan and Hong Kong, Mo Tsum-song, Cheng Mu, Tan Zhen-yi, to keep alive this tradition. And Due Ming was one of their students. He says, by identifying the comprehensive unity of heaven, earth, and humanity as a critical contribution to the modern world, these key figures in new Confucian thought signaled the movement both towards retrieval and reappropriation of Confucian ideas for modernity.
Another influence on our thinking in this regard is the French paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. His dates indicate his coming from the 19th century, his major work in the 20th century, and at the end of his life, he worked in China. He was exiled from France to China because of his position as a Catholic priest and Jesuit So this is a very important influence on our thinking. Teilhard's then a Jesuit paleontologist and geologist of Earth and universe history. His scientific research in China from 1926 to 1935 was fossil-oriented. He was especially collecting early human remains and dinosaurs. From 1939 to 1945, he participated extensively in the discovery of Peking Man, even leading that expedition for a period of time. Teilhard's anthropocosmic ideas inspired many, including our film, Journey of the Universe, and this film and book is a larger project that we have continued to develop. His ideas show a close link to traditional Chinese thought and prompted us to lead the American Teilhard Association for 40 years. Another influence on our thinking is the philosopher Alfred North Whitehead, also a mathematician. He came from the UK to the United States and taught at Harvard. And Whitehead's contributions as a process philosopher and mathematician, it's now realized how similar his thinking is to the dynamic, holistic philosophy of Confucianism and Taoism. He's now an important philosopher in dialogue between China and the West for ecological civilization, and this is continued by the Center for Process Studies, Postmodern Development of China at the Claremont Colleges in California, where 17 conferences have been held on ecological civilization, led by such process thinkers as Drs. John Cobb, Wang Zhihe, and Fan Meijian.
So here in China, as you know, Minister Pan Yue has also been very influential in beginning to develop ecological civilization for several decades. And we were very fortunate to meet him in 2008. At that time, he was Vice Minister of China's State Environmental Protection Administration. And now, as you know, he's Director of National Ethnic Affairs Commission from 2022. And he just led a conference which we attended in Xinzhong on the history and future of Xinjiang. He's promoted a green GDP. He notes that the environmental laws in China and elsewhere can't be enforced without environmental culture and values. This is a very important idea, because in the West we say, oh, science, policy, law, this can solve the problems. But China has this notion that culture, philosophy, values are really important. And this is one of his contributions, and now that of Xi Jinping as well. So when we met him, this notion of ecological civilization and cultural values is what drew us together, because the ecological values from the world's cultures can inspire diverse perspectives on environmental ethics. This is true both in China and the West, because we don't have a comprehensive environmental ethics yet. So we did this project at Harvard in the mid-90s on world religions and ecology, 10 conferences, 10 books, over 10 years. Confucianism and ecology, Taoism and ecology were published here in China. We're going to republish them in Chinese as well. So this was a whole series of conferences where we were trying to say, let's retrieve these traditions and texts, let's reevaluate their relationship to modern challenges, and let's reconstruct. So you can take all kinds of examples. One is just dominion in Christianity in the Bible. Humans are over the sense of earth and control, but scholars are now saying that's insufficient. We have to have a sense of stewardship, of care for creation, and so on. So this is part of the reevaluation and reconstruction of all the world's religions in relation to ecology. So to summarize what we've been saying about the Confucian holistic worldview and ethics, which is indebted to many scholars, as I've mentioned, Professor Liu, Professor Yao, Professor Du, that there's an anthropocosmic rather than an anthropocentric perspective. This is unique to China, I would say, the anthropocosmic worldview. It's an organic holism with this unity of cosmos, earth, and humans. It has a dynamic vitalism of material force, or qi, and it has a comprehensive ecological ethics that humans and nature are one. I just want to highlight qi. Again, a unique contribution of Chinese thought, that material force, matter energy, vital force is a unity. It's not matter, spirit as divided. It's extremely important because it flows through everything, through air, through water, through flowers, birds, forests, humans. And as we cultivate our qi, we're practicing a relationality to nature. We can talk a lot about this, but TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, has that, how do you cultivate your qi? Tai Chi in the parks here in Beijing. I do Qigong to try and cultivate qi as well. So one other text I would like to mention before we conclude is the Dashui, the Great Learning. Now, every Chinese person knows this, I think, very well. And the idea is that the individual is not isolated, but is part of a community. There's responsibilities, not just personal freedoms. This reciprocal responsibilities to the social and natural communities are essential. So self-cultivation of the person affects the whole because of these concentric circles. And by the way, Western students love this idea because it connects us in resonance and relationality. So from the person to family, to society, to education, to politics, to earth, and to the universe. And this resonance, as we cultivate ourselves, we affect everything else. A beautiful idea. We're going to conclude with this extraordinary Neo-Confucian philosopher, Zhang Sai, 11th century, brilliant thinker. And on his western wall of his study, he had the Western inscription, which you all know, I think.
It reads, "Heaven is my father and earth is my mother, and even such a small creature as I finds an intimate place in their midst. Therefore that which fills the universe I regard as my body, and that which directs the universe I consider as my nature. All people are my brothers and sisters, and all things are my companions." The sage identifies his character with that of heaven and earth, and the worthy is the most outstanding person. Even those who have no brothers or children, wives or husbands, are all my brothers who are in distress and have no one to turn to.
So this extends filiality of compassion and care, filial piety, expands to include the cosmos as father, the earth as mother. And this isn't simply metaphorical, but it's in practice. And it's actually also in evolution that everything comes out of the universe and earth. So it's evolution science, it's ecological science, but it implies then respect for nature, not over-exploitation, compassion and care for the human, but also for nature. Another text is the Zhongyong, the Doctrine of the Mean, and I think this is one of the most powerful words in Chinese thought, namely that it urges humans to be aligned with the dynamic and nourishing forces of heaven and earth, the dynamic and nourishing forces of heaven and earth. So we're doing that in many ways with renewable energy of solar, of wind, and geothermal. We're aligning our energies. So to conclude,
Thinking about both principles of ecological civilization, reciprocity presents itself, and it refers to the importance of working for the common good, not simply for individual gain. In a Confucian context, this implies both individual self-cultivation and communal effort for a flourishing society.
a reintegration. This indicates combining knowledge and practice to contribute to the betterment of society. In a Confucian context, this implies educating oneself in practical matters, such as science and technology, as well as matters of principle and values in the humanities.
Finally, renewal. This points to the need for renewable energies for people and the planet in making the transition to ecological civilization and net zero carbon emissions. In a Confucian context, this implies shifting to regenerative energy processes for both the environment and the individual.
So here we have a shared planetary dream. We have the knowledge of science, policy, law, technology, and economics to make the shift. We have this in China and the West, but we need ecological culture and values to create the context for a viable ecological civilization to flourish in China and the West. So we're joining in a mutual effort for the future of our Earth community. I hope you will join in this work. And for more information, there are QR codes in the modern world to connect to these various websites.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So many like people now, we just enjoy the silos, like climate change. We talk about technology, we talk about engineering, how to develop the renewable energy. But I think it's we always think about this kind of nature sciences, direction. Then anything else we may be lack of. So this is what I learned from Yale, from Mary and John, because you are a social scientist and philosopher. So I still remember I introduced my journey to Mary. And Mary, because at that moment I thought, how to step out from my silos. I think we cannot really reach the net zero only with the colleagues in the field of climate. And Mary just showed me her series of books. Just now, I also took a picture again of the Harvard World Theory on Religions and Ecology. And this series of books, suddenly I realized, wow, the world is so big and there are so many connections. And the universe has the answer. And this is why we should develop ourselves. And as you mentioned, like self-cultivation, and also try to find the, or initiate or try to inspire the collective efforts towards a common future. And this future is much, much bigger than only on climate. So thank you so much. Thank you so much again to show me a brighter world. So please have a short rest. My question will go to Professor Yao, because you are the professor on Confucianism, and just now Mary also mentioned a bit. And so what's your comments on Mary and John's lecture just now?
Yeah, okay. And this is the third time for me to be here. And but all three times I enjoyed very much and this conversations. I hope that today is the third and I still enjoy this. And this every time I learned a great deal from John and Mary Evelyn, and for your the inspiration and for your insistence and to spreading these ideas and values to the world. So this is thank you very much and for your all this work. And this is as this in Mary Evelyn and John, this you already gave this kind of outline of this how these Confucian ideas came into the Western thinking and these paradigms. And so these I just wonder is why we would be interested in some kind of ideas about 1,000 to 3,000 to 2,000 years ago, and that is reminding me about this since how we are today reflect our past, how to make a good use of this traditional thinking and resources to serve today's good purpose. So I remember, in 1986. You said you came this the 1985 the first time. So 1986 I taught my students at Renmin University on the applied ethics. One of the sections was this on the environmental ethics. So I told my students at that time, this very confidently say, and in London, in Tokyo, and in Los Angeles, they had so bad pollutions. And this, and also this, not just air pollution, water pollution, and all these kind of things. I said, no, China would not repeat this kind of bad situation. And some students ask me why. I think it's not China just developed because it's just started developing the industry, and so we should know that is bad. So we should have every intention to avoid these kind of consequences. And also I said, this is China was this socialist country, and they would not. Because for the profit and to damage the environment. So this was my position at that time. But then I left for UK and for beginning of this the 21st century. I came back and then found this our pollution much worse, much worse. Then I thought why this happened. Because we knew this lesson, we should have learned the lessons, but we didn't. And of course, in the last 10 or certain years, and particularly in Beijing, and the pollution, has been, and I don't know, I should say they have been under control, slightly better, but I think they certainly improved. And so this means, and as human beings, if we want to live in this world on the earth, we have to be careful about our environment, our ecological and this kind of systems, and that is part of our life, as is shown by and their film, this Journey of the Universe. So we can see human beings is very tiny, this in the whole universe. And but we could create so much damage to the Earth, which under 4.6 billion years, and is much longer than we could imagine. So this is but how about this a tiny existence, a being like humans, could do something about this earth? And that is since I just think is what we can do, and do we really and want to get destroyed and together with the earth? Or we should do something about this conservation. So for this kind of purpose, and I went back to the traditional Confucian ideas. What kind of things where we can get from there. So this is I get very much the inspiration from this. You just mentioned Professor Du Weiming's and this it's not just a book. It's a short article. It's quite a long article. In the book edited by some kind of person called Our Religions. You must know this. They published in the 1995. So in this book, and in the one chapter of this book is produced by the Professor Du Weiming, and talk about Confucianism. And in this the chapter, and he talked about how Confucian scholars would think about this relationship between Earth and between ourselves, between with these other people and with our community, with the society, with the country, and with this whole universe. So this is I remember he drew a map, this within center. You know, we know this Confucianism is this called the human focused. So because this, his student asked him, how could we understand death? And they said, if you can't understand life, how could you understand death? And then this student asked him again. They asked Confucius again, say this, how we could serve the spirits. Then the Confucius replied, if you could not serve the human beings, how could you serve the spirits? So, from all these kind of things, I just think this Confucianism was, humanism, as this Professor Zhu Min said. But, he added this kind of humanism is a spiritual. And this is spiritual, and not just the thing we believe in some kind of, super God and who created the world, but it really is deeply rooted in our mind. This is a connection between human beings and the so-called heaven, Tian. And Tian, this sense could be in the cosmological sense, and as our sources, our origin, where we come from. So by this kind of connection, I think this, I believe we would have this kind of very valuable and the ideas from the past, which could be applied to today, and for us to reflect on our current situation. So this is everybody should know about the 天人合一. And the 天人合一, of course, is a paradigm. How we would think about human being relation with with Earth, with the whole universe. So that is a thing. But sometimes I found this. There are two kinds of orientations within this same. This kind of and expression, and one is this say I would call Tian centered, and Tian centered this the Tian centralism, this kind of things, because it's say human beings are not by our own. We came from Tian, and we should behave according to this heavenly and this cosmic law, and this we should really embrace and this our kind of environment, and we should we could read from the book of Mencius, the book of Xunzi, and even Confucius talk about quite a lot about it. But on the other hand, also as I said, Confucianism is this kind of very human and centered, and this is they talk about quite a. So I just wanted to these two kind of orientations. How could we combine them together? Just the Mary Evelyn, in your presentation, you talk about anthropo and cosmic, and this is the way. Probably we should really change the kind of the debate between the anthropocentrism and this ecocentrism, but we combine them into one ism, and this is the way for us to go on and to live and then to operate and to do our best for the world, for the earth, and also please don't remember, whole human beings is very tiny in universe, and each of our life is also very tiny in the whole human history, and we would have generations and many generations and in the future. So if we didn't do anything and to this current situation, and we would be guilty to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and this is their generations. So we have a responsibility to them. So that is, for the benefit of human beings ourselves. So I think probably it is, and this is we need to pay more attention. We need to do much more than we currently are doing, and to protect the environment, to protect the ecological and systems, and to live in harmony with this whole universe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You remind me a point or a reflection about science. Now the whole academia, the only KPI is modern science. Like all the professors were asked to publish paper on nature, science, and use data, use model, different kind of model. If you know how to use data, you all look like you are much higher, much smarter than the other, especially social scientists. So this kind of model science now occupied all the academia, but it's just in those hundreds of years. And before that is the how to understand. I think the nature science is help us to how to understand the world outside and the physical world. But before that is the ancient science, and it's religion, it's Confucianism, and it's Taoism. It's help us to understand the universe. And then now there is a trend, more people begin to rethink who we are. So we think of ourselves and how to be ourselves. So it looks like even the development of science is a trend. So we cannot say only one science is the best. And each period should learn from each other. But as I said, nowadays, all the science, even in China, especially in China, the KPIs from the Western, the modern science, and this data and model. So I think it's a pity. And also, as Professor Yao mentioned, between the Earth, ourselves, and the other peoples around us, we should set up the connection. And I think we also need to find the connections between each period of science development. And thus we can learn from each other and also show our respect to each other. Otherwise, we cannot find our own value on this earth. So it's just my echo to Professor Yao. So thank you. And then for Gao, you are the only, I would like to call you as an actionist. Right? I learned this word from my colleague in UK, and she creates this word because she thought it's much clearer than only a practitioner. Is you are doing real action, to address different kind of challenge. So what kind of challenge you are in front of, and you try to encounter, and what's your methodology?
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me to this event. So you can imagine how nervous I would be sitting here together with my advisors, my professors on the same panel. So yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, so please excuse me if I'm speak too fast or speak random, something, stupid things. But this is my first time, not first time here in Yale Beijing Center, actually the third time giving a talk here. About 10 years ago, when I was leading the Snow Leopard Conservation Center in the Mount Everest, I was very fortunate to come here and talk about my work on snow leopard conservation at Yale Beijing Center at that time. And last year I also talked about snow leopard and human wildlife coexistence. I gave a talk online to Yale Beijing Center. So my personal journey in my academic training is very interdisciplinary. So you talk about silos, and Professor Yao talk about connections. This is something that I have been trying to do over the past 15 years. since I was an undergraduate student at Peking University. So I majored in biology when I was undergraduate, and I focused on environmental policy, especially policy science, when I was a master's student at Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. And when I was doing my PhD, I was in a combined program between the Yale School of Environment and the Department of Anthropology. So I was trained as a conservation scientist and social cultural anthropologist. So this is the journey that I have been through. And all these years I have been trying to connect knowledge and practice. How can we become what I called edge worker? So now I'm running a program called Edge Worker. It's an initiative that aims to cultivate that kind of awareness and capacity to bridge different worlds. So many problems are created because of the boundaries, whether it is ecological boundaries, geopolitical boundaries, social boundaries, or cultural boundaries, disciplinary boundaries, divide us, and we are not able to see the connection or see the world, the problems that we are facing in a more holistic way, and that causes a lot of problems. So how can we integrate knowledge from different disciplines, whether it is social science, natural science, or the humanities, to help us understand the problem? And how can we connect or integrate different ways of knowing, not just the scientific ways of knowing, but also the indigenous, traditional, local ways of knowing? I'm more familiar with Tibetan Buddhism. So over the years, I have been working together with Tibetan Buddhist monks. And we are trying to integrate science and Tibetan Buddhism to help us promote biodiversity conservation. So we talk about all these important ideas, ecological wisdoms. How can we transform this kind of wisdom into the everyday activity, everyday practice of individuals and the society? And this is something that I feel very important, and something that I have been trying to use my knowledge and expertise to achieve over the years. So different ways of knowing and different ways of life. And we talk about this important idea of different culture might have this understanding of human-nature relationship, which is very different from the modern way of understanding. But how can this kind of traditional wisdom inform our conservation practice, inform the everyday action, everyday life of individuals, like the students here, the scientists here, or the businessmen? And I think what I learned from my Tibetan Buddhist monk is I think three important ideas. First, impermanence. Impermanence. How can we understand the world in the nature of reality? Is impermanence. Everything changes, but we humans tend to see things like as something very stable, and we would like to seize them and try to get them, objectify them, and then try to develop a kind of attachment towards something we like, and develop some kind of dislike towards something that we do not think that will bring us any value. So how can we see that everything is impermanent? Nothing really exists forever. And this is a very important idea for me personally. So what kind of things, what is success? What kind of value defines you? What is the meaning of life? And this is a very important question I think we need to ask ourselves as an individual and also as a society. What do we want to achieve collectively and individually? So this is the first thing. And the second thing that I have learned from my Tibetan Buddhist friend is the idea of compassion. Compassion. So not just like this world is not just that humans habitat. It is also a habitat for so many non-human lives. And so every individual beings, whether it is human or non-human, all try to pursue happiness and avoid suffering. So they are just like us. And how can we have that kind of compassionate attitude towards those non-human beings? And based on this kind of compassion, develop the kind of conservation actions towards wildlife and living together and sharing this planet Earth with we humans. So this is the second thing. And the third thing is the kind of interdependence. So we are also part of this larger whole. I think this idea is also exists in so many different cultures, so many different religions and indigenous ecological knowledge. So how can we see ourselves as part of the larger whole, and rather than alienate self and other and try to create a hard boundaries between ourselves and other human beings, and instead try to connect or create more connections. And this is something very important, and the idea that can be implemented in the everyday life of every individuals. So this is something that I would like to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the 3 points, and you also helped me to recall my journey. Actually, I have a lot of transition in my career. Although in the recent decades, all focus on climate, but before that, at the very beginning, my career as a journalist. And it's also a Tibet monk. Not monk, Tibet Buddhist helped me to change my mind. So I once made an interview in Ali, and I met a beggar there. And he came to me and asked for $1, 1元钱啊 1 yuan. If you can understand it better, 1 yuan. And not 1 yuan. 一角1毛钱 You can just understand as $1. But I only have $10. 我只有1块钱. At that moment, no 1毛钱. 1 cent. So I say, hey, okay, give you 10 cents. And he accept, and then use his hand to find, and then return me none. And I say, what? It's so small money. Why you return me? You can take it. And he said, but in my religion, I cannot own you in this life. If I own you this life, then next life, I have to return you. I say, what? Right? It's definitely so different with our culture. But it's true. It's happened in front of me. Like, at that moment, something really collapsed here. And he helped me to realize, there are different worlds, different mindset. And this world is so beautiful. And I should show my respect. And so this beggar changed my career at that moment. And then before I went to Yale, it's another Buddhist, a really monk this time, changed my life. It's a Thai, Yixing Chan Shi. I read his book. It's Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. At that moment, I only understand climate change. And I have worked in this field for so many years and participate a lot of international conference. And I think, I'm the expert on climate governance and the policies and the kind of ego built up here. But when I read that book, I feel something collapse here. The world is so big and so many connections. And even a monk, he can use Zen to understand how to save the planet. And myself, I only understand the climate, this small field, and I feel my ego. How can I think in this way? So he helped me to reflect and find my humble again, and then also support me at a spiritual level to visit Yale and to work together with the colleagues there. And then I met you. So I can see that this kind of brilliant people, they help me to open my mind. So also thank you so much. And now I'm trying to exercise how to cultivate my compassion. Yeah, to show my respect to everyone, not only human, but also the different creatures on this earth. Yeah. So I'm also curious about your real story cases. Could you please show us one case how to use like Buddhism, your understanding on Buddhism for your conservation work?
It's a very big topic, and let me share one story about my personal journey, how I have shifted because of my interaction with those people coming from very different culture. I was born in southeastern part of China on the coastal area, so from Fujian province, and I like fish. I eat a lot of seafood. I like fish. And I still remember when I was running the Snow Leopard Conservation Center in Tibet. At that time, I worked together with scientists. So even though I live in Tibet, I did not really interact with local Buddhist monks and local Tibetan herders. I spent most of my time with scientists. And so at that time, conservation based on science, that is the approach that we would like to do, used to do conservation. So I still remember at that time I would go to the local market and then bought fish from the merchants there and then took the fish back home and then just use the knife to kill the fish. And at that time, yeah, it seems very normal for me to do that, and I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel anything wrong. But gradually, because I spent so much time with the monks, and they kept telling me the fish would feel painful if you do that to them. So now I can't do that, and I don't even dare to eat fish or any other like shrimp, something that I also like a lot. I don't eat them, like buy them freshly from the markets, but only and gradually I give up eating seafood, even though I like it, and I can't. I start to feel that kind of that feeling towards those non-human beings, something that is not exist or did not exist in my mind at the time. And this is the change that I've gone through personally. And in terms of my conservation activities, as I mentioned, at the very beginning, we use science to do conservation, and especially positivist science. So ecology, we study the population and distribution of snow leopard. We assume that if we understand the current status of a species and also understand the threat posed onto this species, then we can develop some interventions to help us resolve the problems facing this species and then save the species. This is a very logical way of thinking about conservation programs and conservation approach. As I spent time together doing conservation with Tibetan Buddhist monks, and I gradually realized how they see conservation programs in a very different way. Because every individual look at the world from a particular perspective, and that is informed by their worldview, especially their ontology, their epistemology, and their ethics. So how do we define a conservation program? A conservation program is not out there. It's something is defined by individuals from certain perspectives. So from the Buddhist monk's perspective, conservation programs are not something out there created by the actions of some individuals, whether the individuals are from the local or from the outsiders. But it is the collective action, and from many of my conservation Buddhist monks' perspective, what has changed is not the environment. We talk about climate change. We talk about the change in terms of ecology, habitat, species, biodiversity. But from a certain perspective, from the Buddhist perspective, what has changed is not the environment. What has changed is the human mind. The human mind has changed, and that is why the environment has changed. And from this perspective, our conservation focus should be not on the outside world, but on the inside world, our mind. And that is why we focused a lot on how to reinvent or reconstruct Buddhism to help us adapt to the current problems that we are facing today, and focusing on the minds through education, through engaging local communities, through creating more opportunities for local people to use their traditional way of knowing and traditional way of living to participate in conservation. And in this way, we might be able to create a better condition for us to have that kind of opportunity to live together with non-human beings on a shared landscape. So what I have changed, I think, is through focusing on the objective outside world, through science, rigorous science, to more focused on the inner world, the inner minds, and through the understanding of the importance of culture and integrating the different dimensions of conservation problems, whether it is ecological, social, or cultural. How can we integrate these different dimensions to see the collectiveness, and from this perspective to do conservation? Yeah, thank you.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Mary. I know you're always very keen to talk with the audience. So now let's open the floor to the audience. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise up your hands. Hey? Oh, yes, please.
Thank you, Professor, and I'm also very keen on about your interdisciplinary subjects, the combination between the culture and also the ecological civilization. But I have a question about, you mean that we need to cultivate people's culture in order to create a better environment, and you focus on the Confucius and also Taoism and also many cultures. But I think so which one do you mainly focus in? Is about Confucianism or Taoism, or like the Christianity or something else? Yeah.
All of them. There's every tradition we're trying to suggest has something to offer for this critical moment for our planet and for future generations. In Christianity, there's a huge field of eco-theology now, many books, many courses, and so on. In the Middle East, there's a whole example called Eco-Peace Middle East, and it brings together Judaism, Christianity, Islam on water issues to save the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee. So there's many practices, there's ideas and practices. If you look on our website, there's engaged projects from all over the world on every tradition. So I, of course, value, as you can see, the traditions of East Asia because I think they're quite extraordinary. They're very ancient, but they're very relevant. So that happens to be a deep interest. But my husband specializes in indigenous traditions, and we've been adopted into a family on the Crow tribe in Montana. And indigenous traditions are hugely important, just as you said, traditional environmental knowledge and so on. So all of these traditions are very, very significant. Why? 80 to 85% of the world's people identify as religious. So we need to bring that force into the discussion. And finally, I would say we've been trying with many scholars, many environmentalists, many practitioners to create a new field of study. 25 years ago, there was no field of religion and ecology. And after the conferences, many people started to develop this. There's now 25 graduate programs in North America, in master's programs, PhD programs. But maybe even more important is we say there's a field, but there's also a force, a moral force. And that moral force is gaining traction. Right now in New York, the banks are having people from various religions saying this climate change lending of money to oil companies is morally wrong. And so they're blocking the doors and so on. So there's a moral transformation now that's happening all around the world, actually. Climate justice, eco-justice, and so on is part of it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So it's basically to analyze the other world traditional culture and to like the big work collaborate for one goal.
Well, you know, it's going to be, the phrase here is unity and diversity, right? So I'm not suggesting it's going to be one goal with everybody on the same page. This is why the diversity of religions, philosophies, and cultures are so important, and that we understand what you have learned from Buddhism, what I've learned from Buddhism, and so on, is very, very important. But we are suggesting, it's a suggestion, that the idea of ecological civilization has a very profound potential to bring people together. Certainly in China, it's already doing this, and again, professors here who have studied this can comment as they would like to. And what I find very interesting is even in the West, this idea is now being picked up, because everyone is saying, we've done the Industrial Revolution. Certainly China has, brilliantly. But now we need something different, ecological civilization. If we can't breathe the air in Beijing, if the food security is a problem, if the water, we can't drink it, if traditional Chinese medicine, if the herbs are polluted, we have a problem. Right? So it's very real, it's very practical, it's not just ideas, you know? We want for our children a healthy environment. We don't have children, but we feel our students are our children. And this is work for all future generations.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you.
Hello, Professor, and I'm a high school student, and I've heard the lecture, and I have some questions and some of my comments to share, and I would like to ask anyone who is willing to answer my questions. So you could just. So my first question is regarding facts or basic knowledge. Because since I'm a green hand in social science, and because I recently want to discover this field.
Can you hold your microphone?
Oh, okay. So my first question is about the categories of civilization, because in the lecture, you've mentioned that the civilization has a lot of categories, such as material civilization, cultural civilization, and so forth. So could you say more about that for me to let me know what it mainly is?
So that's actually from the Chinese Constitution in 2018 that is trying to say this isn't a one issue, it's not just ecology, but it's trying to bring together a transformation that's systemic. Okay. So we need a green GDP. Okay. We need ecological education. We need a new politics that has like a green party, even in the West. You see, so all these sectors have to come together so we don't just have silos. That's what's being indicated by the Chinese Constitution, but also this call to go beyond disciplines and sectors. Something much more unified. Integral ecology is a term being used in the West now. Okay. Integral ecology.
Okay. So material is like a physical concept, and civilization is like a mental concept. So if you combine these two together, so what does it really mean?
Yeah, I think this civilization, this word, and this really came from French in the 18th century. 18th century, and this is originally it was only meant for the politeness and this courtesy and this something like some kind of how you treat other people. But gradually it had been expanded to including to refer to all the achievements human-made and this the guidance of the proper philosophy and the value systems and this achieve these kind of things. So this is today civilization used basically about two senses. One is this human achievements, material achievements, and the cultural achievements, and another is called ethical use and value, evaluative. And if you're civilized and you're good, you perform good, speak nice, and but if you are uncivilized, you shout at other people. So this two kind of uses of this civilization and this in our vocabulary. So this refer to your first question about what kind of the tradition we talk about is Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, and all this Christianity and Islam. So all the people, why these people try to find these resources in traditional belief systems to try to serve this today's and our environmental protection and conservation and this kind of thing. So this means that tradition and the not as they call modernization theorists said, tradition died. Tradition was bad. Tradition in contrast with the modernity. Because I've been teaching a course on the tradition and modernity, and this in last 10 or 15 years. I've been teaching this course for the undergraduate. So one student asked me why I teach this course. So this is not really a proper name for a course. I said, tradition and modernity are two powers. We can't ignore any of them. And if we lost one of them, and then we could be trouble. So if we stay with the tradition and not modernize ourselves, then we would be discussed by the world anyway. But on the other hand, if we moved to the modernization, and then this and without this traditional beliefs, value systems, and the customers, and this means our modernization would be short of something which is valuable to us. So that is probably I think this as this Mary Evelyn said, all traditions are useful, all are valuable to today. When we live in this 21st century, and how to reflect our relation and with the environment, with the ecology, and these kind of things here. Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, we have to achieve a balance between tradition and modernization.
Not shift, but I think we need to combine them rather than just separate them. Because this, in the past, in the 19th century and the first half of this 20th century, and these people are really quite keen about modernization. So tradition is something which is bad and also backward and also the obstacles for our further progress. But today, and I think not today, I think it's the 1950s, and more and more people realize that tradition is a part of our earth, part of our life. You just can't throw them away. It will be there, and it is there. So this is so I should say today how we combine tradition and modernity together, then to find a new way forward.
Okay, so now I know the role that traditions play on like the mental development of the mental development. And so I have another question about how do the religions form? Is regarding this this topic. Like my question is about like because I've also learned some like social science, and I'm really curious about this topics. So like when the Tao, let's say Taoism, and it is a very ancient religion, and like I assume that it is it formed, it is generated mainly because of the people's dependence on nature, because it has this theory called like 天人合一. It stresses the harmony between human and nature. Because at that I assume that at that time people they develop cultivation, and they have a really high degree of dependence on the nature. So they are very aware of the nature because they couldn't control it or tolerate to it. But when the time elapsed, the technology had been developed, and like let's say in the Western civilization, they have they've achieved the Industrial Revolution. They've passed through the Industrial Revolution, and the.
Okay, I think you can think more about your question, and because just now we answered one question from your side, I think from the question justice perspective, let's leave the time to the other friends here, and if we still have more time, we can back to you, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, good.
Actually, I want to share some comments of gratitude here. Actually, about 3 years ago, I attended the Yale Center Beijing Smart Talk.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Actually, I'm here to share some comments for gratitude. Actually, 3 years ago, I attended the Yale Center Beijing's Smart Talk on climate change. During that time, I actually developed several interests in the current world issues, such as mental health, and multicultural perspective, and of course, those problems related to environment and our relationship with all of our friends in nature. And yeah, just like what you mentioned, I really like the point that everything is interconnected. As those 3 years passed, I started to see the connections between what I love, what I sought for, what I experienced throughout my lifetime. And I feel like, everything is interconnected. And from my perspective, I really like the point of compassion and interdependence, especially compassion. Here's my new point. And I'm a very sympathetic person, and I usually show a lot of sympathy to what's happening around me, good or bad. So those kind of things really inspired me to take actions to discover a better version of myself, to explore more about the world, how I can make it better while I'm personally developing. So I think I'm really resonated with all the points you all covered today, and I feel like if we can connect history with like the traditions with modern day society and combine, not really combine, it's like to borrow and to seek the connection between different cultures, I feel like we can all make things better and create a better world. So thank you for all the speakers.
Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, more hands here.
Hey, my name is Ang, and I'm working for the German Agency for International Corporations, and I'm actually also a fresh starter in the field of climate. And I just so intrigued by the word ecological civilizations. And for me, when I listen the word civilizations is really like for me it's like from the Western perspective, and like you need to it's more like in the industrial. Okay, I will go into my questions that like sorry. How can you define a group of people or like an individual as ecologically civilized? Because when I'm thinking about like, let's say a group of native tribe, they are so respectful of environment, and they are like just consume what they need, and they just eat when they're hungry. And I'm just thinking, could we say they are ecologically civilized, or like, or do you have any like examples to show us that like what could make a person or like a group of people to be civilized ecologically? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for this wonderful question. So I'm coming from an anthropological perspective. So as an anthropologist, now I'm wearing a hat of anthropologist. And anthropologists have been studying civilization, cultures for years, for hundreds of years. And anthropologists might have anthropologists tend to take a critical perspective towards those understandings of civilization and culture, and emphasizing that civilization or culture are defined by people from certain perspectives. So they are not essentialized. They are not something that is out there or something can be defined by someone. Instead, we need to pay attention to the process. The process. Who gets to decide what is called civilization, ecological civilization? Who gets to decide what is ecologically civilized? And do we have a accepted or and that kind of accepted procedure to help us use certain processes to define and also use that definition to safeguard the community's common interest? And in this sense, the communities might include both humans and non-humans. So then, in this way, you shift the question: what is what is the process, and how can we build up that kind of process to help us achieve certain ends? So, what are the ends, and what are the means, and what kind of mechanism can help us use that kind of means to achieve that ends? So, see them as a more dynamic process rather than something just out there already defined by someone. So it's a process that every one of us can participate to define what is ecological civilized. You can have your definition, and I have my definition, but we need to come up with some process to allow these different perspectives to interact based on certain principles. And that kind of principles, I think, is something that we can retrieve from those ancient wisdoms. The understanding of interdependence, compassion, and what is good life? What kind of good life do we want to achieve? And what is happiness? So all these questions are very important, not just for individuals, but also for society as a collective. So what is an ideal society we want to have? And what is the ideal life as a person I want to have? And if we really take a very closer look at the kind of ideal status we want to achieve, then we will see the interconnectedness of different sectors, whether it is political, economic, or religious, or culture, or ecological. we realize that the kind of happy life or the kind of happiness depends on a very healthy ecosystem, because ecosystem provide all these important resources or benefits or services. Different people might use different terms to talk about this, but human society, we depend on ecology, a well-functioned ecosystem to function, to sustain. And in this way, as a collective and as an individual, we need to think about how are we going to achieve that kind of ideal status, and what kind of behavior can be defined as ecological civilized. So I'm talking about a more reflective and a more thoughtful approach towards those kind of definitions. And it asks for more reflectiveness and more critical thinking. Because these days, I think particularly for my Chinese students, I also teach Chinese students, and many times people tend to have a very rigid understanding about what is something. They ask for definitions, but from a certain perspective, we humans create all kinds of symbols to help us make sense of the world. So whether it is culture, civilization, ecological civilization, these are all symbols that we humans create to denote or to express certain values, certain worldviews, certain ideas, certain practice. So what kind of thing or what kind of meaning do we want to input to that kind of symbol? For what kind of effect is something that we need to think about. So we create so many concepts, whether it is self or others, or material or spiritual, or natural science or social science, or different body and mind, or like nature and culture. All these are symbols that we create to divide the world, to categorize the interconnected world into different silos. But these days, I think we are in a historical moment that asks for connectiveness, more connection between different silos. And in this way, we can have a more holistic approach to these conservation programs. Thank you so much.
I know why you are the creator and innovator. It's a term in Chinese. It's my friend Song Qiu also working on it. Is 创变者, right? Yeah. So you can observe. The mindset is different. Yeah, please.
We should have short questions and short answers.
Yeah. We have 20 minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to try my best. Thank you so much for your input. I think the climate crisis issue is really well known worldwide, but still you can see those anti-climate movements. I'm from Germany, we have people against the Green Deal, against climate issues, people not wanting to be restricted and afraid that their living standard is going to decrease or that they have too many rules and everything. And I was kind of wondering how you can implement your research to bring the issues how we can achieve ecological civilization and how we can have a more positive spin on how we can combat the climate crisis. Because you mentioned there's a lot of research already well known, but how do we implement that people are not against working against those climate movements?
So I think this is a really very important question, and I will repeat, that we have the science, we have the policy, we have even new green economics, we have law, we have technology, incredible technologies. What's missing? A political will, clearly, but also a mindset. That's why Pan Yue's idea of ecological culture is so important. If we don't have this paradigm shift, we won't be able to make the change. But today, the United Nations Development Program announced a poll to say that more than 80% of the world's people understand the critical nature of climate change and that something must be done about it. Bin has already showed here in China, 95% of the people understand that. But this poll is a worldwide poll. It's very, very important, that is saying the awareness of this problem is huge. We can do this by fear. We can say, look at the heat in Beijing, look at the heat in New Delhi, look at the heat in the US, look at the fires, look at the floods, and so on. But we have not connected the dots fully. In the US, we don't report fires and floods as climate related. You see, weather changes and climate related. We've got to connect the dots. We've got to make it very clear that this is critical and it's going to get worse. And we have to have a moral force about this. Let me just, and I'll stop here. But the example of a remarkable moral force is Pope Francis's encyclical letter, Laudato Si. And he is combining this people and planet idea to say eco-justice, if you will, but he talks about the cry of the earth, the cry of the poor. Our colleagues at Yale said, and many other environmentalists have said, this is why we got an agreement in Paris, in the COP15 in Paris, because the moral force of Laudato Si was very clear. And now there's classes on this. The Vatican has a whole class, 700 people taking it, and so on. So this shift is happening. Very, very much it's happening. Has to happen quicker, but it's happening.
Yeah, before that, I want to add one point from climate change perspective. Just now you mentioned about a lot of research. No, there's only a lot of research on eco-civilization from a philosophy side and a lot of research from climate change side about climate change. So it's there's still like empty between these two fields. So this is why I think all the people in this room, we are the pioneer, because we hear about this kind of message. There's a connection between climate change and eco-civilization. I think even the Chinese government, although we highlight eco-civilization so much, but I haven't seen any piece about the synergy between climate change and eco-civilization. And we highlight carbon neutrality, but no report analyze the synergy between carbon neutrality and eco-civilization. But why I think it's so important? See, when we talk about climate change, we always talk about the Industrial Revolution, because at that moment we began to use the fossil fuel, and then we polluted the earth. And now we think, oh, it's dirty, and we should move on, and we find the renewable energy, right? But from the eco-civilization's perspective, the fossil fuel also come from the earth, the nature, and the renewable energy same. So it's not the force of nature. It's because our human, we use too much. We want too much from the nature. We use almost all the fossil fuel. We have to move on, find new energy. So the key point is about our mindset. It's not about just a repeat, oh, climate change is so important. It's a challenge. It's about why. Why we have this crisis? It's because our mindset was wrong. We continue although we say, oh, there are some mistake from the Industrial Revolution, but we're still in the process of industrial civilization. So we should change our mind to the eco-civilization, to respect the nature, to reconnect with the earth. And only in this way we can really find the pathway to address climate change, to reach the carbon neutrality. And once we reach the carbon neutrality, it should be a milestone to reach the eco-civilization.
So, should I raise my question? About the Chinese philosophy of 天人合一, the harmony or integration of heaven and people and human being. So my question is that I don't have a very solid foundation or knowledge basis about philosophy or Chinese philosophy, but I don't recall a lot of, how much or what's the percentage of the 天人合一 is about environment or ecology conservation or environment protection. I only can think about, the traditional Chinese people or Chinese traditional governments they are, echoing a lot of, architecture on the ground to some of the stars in the sky, or some of the emperors claim he is the son of the heaven, or something like to give himself the kind of authority to govern other people. So beyond that, I don't recall a lot of sense of nature conservation or ecology conservation or environment protection this kind of meaning in this concept of integration of human being and heaven. So just this is a question, so to ask the professors or to guide me how to, what are the main, for example, books or from which philosophers that we have the kind of more environment or ecology kind of aspects of this concept. Another thing is
just very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have other questions. I won't list it out. But if you look on our website for Religion and Ecology, there are many, many books on this topic. There's journals on this topic. There are projects on this topic. But I want to say also here in China, there's a lot of publications on ecological civilization. Han Yue has papers in English and in Chinese.
I'm not talking about modern or contemporary kind of this concept. It's about ancient. I'm thinking of so the 天人合一 is not a concept of the modern or contemporary invention. Is I think you are talking about the ancient kind of concept from the ancient books. So I'm talking about like Qing or Ming or Qin or pre 先秦诸子 kind of 诸子百家, that kind of era. What? Yeah. So I think their concept is not necessarily about environment or ecology. It's more about other kind of social aspect or something like political aspect.
Professor Wu, you want to answer this question?
So I quite agree with his ideas about the Confucianism. So today, when we talk about the positive thoughts from of Confucianism, we cannot forget that the Confucianism tries its best to justify the privilege of the ruling class. And recently, I'm impressed by a book written by English historian of economy. His ideas may be too extreme. He said that in the whole history of human mind, there is only one event that can that should be paid great attention to. That is the things happened in 1800. Actually, he means that for the whole history of human mind, only the industrialization or the modernization is the most important thing. Before that, all the ruled class or laborers are living or were living the lives which are not different from lone animals. They are very, very poor. I remember this actually before 1978. many people in countryside in China lived very miserable life. So when we talk about the good ideas from Confucianism, we cannot forget that Confucianism is an ideology which tried its best to justify the privilege of the ruling class. Okay, thank you very much.
Professor Yao?
Since you have made a good point, and it's how we will reflect on the traditional wisdom, and even this wisdom was not adopted by the ruling class in the past. So this I think this is really about the poverty. Poverty was this one probably the biggest damage to the environment, and then and any kind of industrialized and this I remember this when I was in the countryside. So we cut trees, we cut down the trees because we don't have anything burning. For the cooking and for this heating. So we just can cut down anything we could have found, and that the middle of this 1970s. So this probably also I remember is how this kind of newly developing countries how hard it is for them to talk about ecological civilization. And when they were still in the poverty. And I remember that 10 years ago I visited India. So China at that time this environmental problem is quite bad. But when I went to India, I found they are even worse. And today probably these most polluted cities in the world, probably India would have quite some. But then did they not understand this would damaging to their health, damaging to their land, damage to their climate? Yes, I'm sure they are aware about this, but they can't stop. And this is just as I said, beginning of my talking, and since 30 years ago, I said, China would not repeat these environmental disasters, but actually China did have the environmental disasters, and till this recent the past. So back to these questions, and this gentleman talk about what kind of resources we could get from Confucian 天人合一, and I think we do have this kind of good resources. Even these resources were not put in good use, but today we could pick them up. And then, for example, in the Mengshes, they talk about the Renmin 爱物. Renmin 爱物, this to be benevolent to the people, and this to take care of the old things. And also in Xunzi and this Mengshes, they talk about how we should and following this the natural way, and to give this kind of plants, and give this kind of different the animals and the fish, and their own due in the world. And this is and also this in Dongzhong Shu, and he talk about 天人感应. So this means what you did in the world, this heaven, and 天 would know about this. They would respond to what you did. So all these kind of things, even they were not put into a practice in some kind of environmental friendly policies. But today we could use them. Then this to try to see and what we could develop into a more this kind of environmental civilized and policies, cultures, and minds, as this Gao said. This on the one hand, we need to change this and the environment, because this environment has been polluted. We need to give better protection. But on the other hand, we need to change our mind. So this, because all of us want to be rich so dearly, and so this, and then this we have to think this what it costs. This would bring to us. So this is for everything we throw them out. This would be part of the pollution, and we recreate because it's not today. We need to really think this say what I can do, and what we can do together, and this is what this whole country and do together, and hold the world. So only this way, and this is the world will be, and as it was, or they used to be as beautiful as before. And
so just very quickly, of course, Confucianism has a negative side. Confucianism is authoritarian. We've seen it throughout its history, no question. Our perspective, and I should have made it much clearer at the beginning, is every tradition has its negative side, its controlling side, its orthodox side. We know that. So what we say in the Harvard Project, and until now, religions, philosophies have their problems historically and in the present, and they have their promise, their possibility of change. Christianity is very orthodox, terrible institutional abuses historically and at present, but liberation theology in Latin America has given great hope to the poor and for transformation, for hope, for liberation. So women's issues, every religion has had women in their place, no question. So I think this is a really important point. I think what Professor Yao is saying is an important reply as well. So we can't be naive. We certainly can't be naive, because all these traditions are still being used for ideology and control. There's no question.
Yeah, I also want to add one point. Before I visited Yale, I definitely agree with Professor Lu, because in our China context, especially current context, most of the time, we highlight the negative side of Confucianism. So before I get a connection with Mary and Professor Du Weiming, I have same idea. No, there are not any positive points in our traditional culture maybe, and even the Zhongyi Chinese medicine, because a lot of liars. So, but when I met you and you also show me Professor Du Weiming's book, you helped me to realize, my reflection is that, as you mentioned, different period of culture, they have their own problem, but there are also some wisdom. What you are doing is try to pick up the wisdom. And as Gao mentioned, we should keep inclusive mind and be the creator and innovator to co-create our future, the new civilization, but not only repeat the old. We should build on the old, but create new. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a little bit. Yeah, and in this process of co-creation, all these different traditions, whether it is called culture or religion or tradition, they contain both negative sides, positive sides, and even within a single tradition, it is not homogeneous. Different people might have very different ideas, but they are what anthropologists call cultural repertoires. They are a source of aspiration, a source of different ideas, different tools, where we can learn from this different this source to reflect on the mainstream ideas and think about the alternatives. Are there different ways of thinking about ourselves? What kind of life do we want? What is happiness? What is success? Do you feel happy today? And is there another way of seeing the world? And is there another alternative way of development? So this tradition contains this kind of resources for us to reflect on our current status and think about our future. Thank you.
Thank you. I notice one hand there. Song Qiao.
My question was partially answered, I felt like, by the discussion just now, because I was curious about the World Religion and Ecology project, because all of these religions have such different approaches and worldview. And right now in the world, we have at least 2 wars going on because of different ideology and different belief system and different narratives of civilization. And so I'm curious, my initial question was to all of you who are interdisciplinary weavers or thinkers, what is the beginning to actually, first, shared principle to move from division to understanding and harmony, right? Harmony is such an important traditional Chinese thought. And even sometimes when harmony was overlooked, when harmony is think that's wishy-washy or it's not clearly stating your perspective. Last year at COP28 in Dubai, there was a first ever faith pavilion where faith leaders could gather. And it was such a shock to me that after 28 years of talking about climate change, we haven't invited and made a space for faith leaders. And possibly also because faith has had made a difficult position in this whole discussion, because climate change is about science, is about law, it's about governance. So my question was about how do we move from division to harmony? And I felt like that discussion just now kind of started to talk about it. That's why I felt like, I already got a lot out of it. Thanks.
Have a lot of fun, huh?
Before the Dubai conference in Abu Dhabi, we went to an international interreligious meeting, which was also the first before a COP. It was led by the Muslim world, actually. It had very high representation from all over the world. And there's now, with the United Nations Environment Program, Faith for Earth. And that's been maybe 6 years. So it's taken a long time because religions have their problems and their negative side, no question. But where are we going to get values for change? That's the point. We can't ignore them, and we've got to keep changing, encouraging for more positive ways forward. But I agree, these wars are horrible, and the U.S. involvement in them is very regrettable, to put it mildly. Let's just say if we change military spending in the U.S., incredible changes could happen. Lots more to say about that.
So I think it's time, to, thank you, John, good timekeeper. So it's a time for us to stop here. And I know you still have a lot of questions. So how can we keep connections? This, yeah.
Ecological Civilization in Chinese.
Oh, yes. We are talking about to set up a new project, Climate and Culture in Peking University. So hopefully we can continue this conversation there. And also, please scan the QR here and follow us. And you are welcome to join us in the future. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Yale.
Yeah, thank you, Yale Center Beijing. Devin, thank you so much to host us here.